All right. We are live. We are back. Timberwolves fans, welcome into the Daily Wolves podcast. I'm your host, Evan. And usually I'm with my co-host, Trip. He's busy tonight doing a few things, but I got one of the best people around to hold down the fort tonight. This is Jake Paynting over at Housing Growls on Twitter. Great stuff as always. One of the best writers out there. Knows, all his stats. And everything. And Jake's been somebody I followed myself for a long time. And if you don't already follow him, you should definitely give him a follow. Jake, where can they find you exactly on Twitter, and kind of introduce yourself, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, I'm super excited to be here. So it's been a long time coming that we wanted to get together and talk. So you can find me at House and Growls on Twitter, House and Growls on YouTube as well. I've been doing some YouTube stuff, and House and Growls is my newsletter as well, my Timberwolves newsletter. So you can find that at houseandgrowls.substack.com, or just type in House and Growls or House and Growls Timberwolves or something in your Google search bar, and you'll find all my stuff. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Super excited to talk some Wolves, because we've finally got a little bit of Wolves action again. We're not quite in the boring bit of the off season. So yeah, I'm excited.
No, and speaking of not being in the boring part of it, we have FIBA basketball, which we'll get into in a little bit, kind of getting us through it. We had the summer league and had some impressive stuff, which maybe we'll go over a couple awesome players in a summer league for those Wolves fans. And, just looking forward to pretty soon here, hopefully USA kind of getting in there, winning the tournament. And then it's going to be, training camp's going to be right there for the Timberwolves. So we're going to be rocking and rolling. You're going to see Wolves Twitter really, all the reporters are going to be back on. You're going to see Dane and John and all those great guys covering it daily. And so we'll be right into it. And then before you know it, it's Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat coming to Target Center on the 28th. So, I'm thinking about flying in for that game. Hopefully a lot of Timberwolves fans turn out. And today I wanted to start it off with, before we kind of got into everything about the FIBA tournament, there's something, Jake, that kind of rubbed people the wrong way the other day on Twitter, at Wolves Twitter, was feeling some type of way about it. And that is Patrick Beverley. He did hop on his podcast, man. And I know you saw the video. I know a lot of Timberwolves fans that are watching saw the video in the comments that Patrick Beverley did make about Anthony Edwards and about Minnesota. What did you exactly think about that, Jake?
Well, I actually obviously know what he said. I didn't click into the video because I couldn't bring myself to listen to Pat Bev speak such blasphemy, especially as a guy who I think, in general, obviously we've all really enjoyed Pat Bev when he was with Minnesota, and he's always seemed like a guy who went for bat for these smaller markets and went to bat for Anthony Edwards and for these superstars who are emerging in teams that aren't the big market teams. So it was a little bit disappointing to see Pat say that, and it was a little bit disappointing just in general, because it's a guy that we all love and we all respect for what he did with the Timberwolves. I mean, it's just stupid, isn't it? It's a stupid narrative. If every player is going to end up with a big market team, or needs to end up with a big market team to see their star rise, then we may as well just put 5 teams in LA and 5 teams in New York and 5 teams in Miami and just call it a day. And then we can all just, enjoy the basketball with the teams that are meant to be there according to these people. So I think it's stupid. I think that Anthony Edwards is signed a 5-year contract 3-4 weeks ago, and we could at least give it maybe a year or two before we start talking about how he needs to move to another team. And there was that article that came out today that's caused a lot of rage and stirred up the fan base as well about the same thing. And it's the same answer. It's just dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I get where they're coming from, and it would help it might help him be more recognized. It might help him be out there and get all the fame that he's always wanted. But at the same time, when a player is so special like Anthony Edwards, I mean, you don't need to be in New York City. Eventually, if you're truly that special, you're going to shine anywhere. I mean, look at Giannis Antetokounmpo out in Milwaukee. He won with the Bucks, proving that he can win with the team, right? Look at the Denver Nuggets. They just won the NBA Finals, and there's a star out there who's the best center, arguably the best big to ever play the position ever in NBA history. And so, those guys are getting national games. The Wolves don't have a lot of national games this year, but he's doing everything he can right now to really earn the respect from the league. They're probably going to get some games added this season, I'm assuming, because he's that electric. He's been that great in the FIBA tournament. But I think really it's just, Kevin Garnett, when he used to be here, he was a big time player. Everybody did know him in the NBA. And so if Kevin Garnett can be labeled the big ticket by everybody, then it shows you that there is a market out there. And Anthony Edwards, he not only, is he that kind of player that you and me love and a lot of people watching, but, he's even in movies, right? He's an actor now. We even had that in Minnesota. And
yeah, I don't think the big market has restricted him in doing anything that a big market player would be able to do. Like you said, he's in movies. Everyone knows his name. He's leading the USA team right now. He's kind of the head honcho for that team. And Steve Kerr, the coach, has gone on record saying that. I mean, there's nothing at this point of his career that I think has been held back by being in a market like Minnesota. So I don't understand where that comes from. And look, the Timberwolves and Ant himself as a member of the Timberwolves need to prove that they deserve 20, 25 national TV games because they have been bad for so long. But that's the beauty of having a player like Anthony Edwards, is that he will bring them wins. He's already brought them to 2 playoff series. He's been excellent in those playoff series, box office in those playoff series. And as the wins come, which I suspect they'll come more this season than they did last season, the season after that, they'll get more national TV games. Like you kind of alluded to, these things will come on the back of Anthony Edwards. I don't think he needs to go somewhere else to earn the respect that he will naturally kind of just find by being a great player.
Yeah, like you look at, Minnesota when we got Jimmy Butler and players that came here that year. The Wolves got a Christmas Day game. We have never had a Christmas Day game ever, right? That was the first time I believe we ever got one. So like you do see it doesn't matter that you're a small market, and it just matters that you have a big time player and they believe you're going to be good. The NBA believes in you. And I think with him, the marketing, it's there. The kid is special. He's going to be in more movies. He's going to be out there. And right now he's just exploding in the national media. So yeah, that goes right into the next thing. Let's talk about the FIBA tournament, man, because the Wolves have multiple players in there. They got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They got Kyle Anderson playing, Karl-Anthony Towns, obviously Anthony Edwards. Luka Garza played a little bit overseas too in a separate tournament that wrapped up. But, there's a lot of Wolves representation right now out there. And, Anthony Edwards, on top of just the FIBA tournament, like from what I've seen, I think he's taking the leap, Jake. I really do. I think he's been taking the leap this summer. Now, I saw it starting when the Timberwolves made the playoffs and they went up against the Denver Nuggets, who won the finals, obviously, later. One of the best teams in the NBA, great defenders, Bruce Brown on them. We've heard the comments from Bruce, and I saw him just performing out of his mind in the playoffs, averaging 31.6 points per game. And in the career of Anthony Edwards in 2 playoff years, when he played the Grizzlies and played against Denver, he's averaging 28 points a game. I mean, that's absolutely crazy for a guy who just turned 22. And then he continued to play going to the FIBA tournament. I think he's really shown everybody that he's the best player on Team USA. And I think that's special because you look around on Team USA, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s got a max. Tyrese Halliburton just signed a big contract, right? There's players around him. Paulo Banchero, Rookie of the Year. All these players around him that are somebodies as well. They're getting max contracts as well. But he's just separated themselves, and he just looks like a star player that when the team goes to the Olympics the next year, he's one of the players that's going to be on that Olympic roster.
Yeah. Well, I think to your point that he's kind of taking the leap, I think that he is just taking every step that you expect a budding superstar to take. I mean, he had the very good rookie season, obviously didn't win Rookie of the Year, but a very good rookie season nonetheless. He has that second year where he takes a pretty sizable jump in his play, but he still has a few issues in his game. Then he gets to the playoffs in his second year, and he gets that early experience in the playoffs, plays really well in a series that they really should have won. But again, he takes a few lumps in that series. He's a part of those teams that give up the 20-point leads and the big fourth quarter comebacks from Memphis. And then the third year, he kind of takes a pretty sizable leap again in terms of individual play. He makes the playoffs again. He's an all-star. And now he's into his 4th offseason or his 3rd offseason. And he's with Team USA. He's the best player on Team USA, or at least the the most kind of the guy in the light, I guess, the most in Team USA. He's got the ball the most for the team. And that's just all natural. There's been no missteps in terms of what you would expect a young superstar to have in his first 3 seasons. And this FIBA tournament is another huge step. It's like you said, playing with really great players, leading really great players, learning to play. Sometimes you might not get the ball a lot. Sometimes you might have to give Tyrese Halliburton more of the ball, or Austin Reeves is taking possessions off him, or Paolo Banchero is taking possessions. And that's a good thing. That's what you want for a guy to learn kind of a little bit of basketball humility, I guess, in terms of being able to play with great players and to still play great alongside those great players. And like I said, he's taking all of these steps and he keeps checking off these boxes. And I'm just super excited to kind of see where this summer can lead him into next season and can translate into an NBA environment, because working with these coaches, man, Spoelstra, Kerr, Ty Lue, like that, and there's a bunch of other coaches on that roster as well who are just all-time coaches. So I'm excited to see what that knowledge that he can sponge up from all these different people, these players, these coaches, can kind of translate into the next level for him. And whether that next level is, all NBA or just a really fixed all-star spot, or even if it's just winning 52 games with the Timberwolves and getting to the second or third round of the playoffs, that's all on the cards for him. And there's no evidence right now to suggest that he isn't going to be the kind of guy who can do that for his team.
Would you say that from the first playoff series that Anthony Edwards had against the Grizzlies, there was a noticeable change of some sort between, like you said, giving away the leads? We all watched in Memphis where they just blew all those leads. Now we're taking that series and how Anthony Edwards played, and then we're looking at the Denver series, which is recent. Would you say there's a difference? And even with like Team USA, right? The game's getting close. Like today, this morning, people who watched it, Anthony Edwards comes out the second half, erupts for 17 points in the second half, and really just does it on both ends. He's playing defense, he's scoring, he's erupting. And the thing is, too, everyone thinks of Anthony Edwards as a scorer, but what I saw in the Denver series, what I saw this morning is Anthony Edwards is, I feel like he's like, think about it, Jake, like the game against Denver where Anthony Edwards said, "I refuse to get swept." I feel like that's a learning, something like he's learned from when they played the Grizzlies. They didn't just lose because of Ant, but I just feel like he learned a lot from that series, and he's really learned how to I have to play on both ends, and I will do whatever it takes to win for my team.
Yeah, I mean, the difference for me when I kind of think back on those 2 series in terms of from an Anthony Edwards lens is in that first series, I think he was obviously really great against Memphis, but I think that he was great because it was just happening for him. They were in very close games. It was kind of just an Anthony Edwards playing well, like he always plays well, but over a longer stretch of time, over 5 games in a row or 6 games in a row.
Yeah.
The Denver series was... This was a team that was really up against the ropes from the first minute of the first game. They got punched in the mouth. This was obviously a really great Denver team who were primed to win a championship. And he had Karl Anthony Towns, who was really struggling to begin the series. Gobert isn't the offensive kind of sidekick that he needs, and he hasn't been all season. Jaden McDaniels isn't there. Naz Reid isn't there to give them 15 points a night. This was a guy, I think, who was almost backed into a corner in terms of as a scorer, and people can wilt in those situations. And obviously, they win just 1 game of 5. But if Edwards averages 21 a game on a mediocre efficiency, then with all the excuses in the world would be there for us to be talking about right now. And all the excuses I just said, that it was a really tough hand that he was dealt in that series, and he went the opposite way. Even before that game 4 where the refused to be swept game, the game 3 was insane. He was insane in that loss. The fourth quarter in Denver, he was making some of the craziest shots. It was every possession, ball in his hands for the entire possession, defense blitzing him at half court. That they were leaving Towns open, they were leaving Gobert open, and he was destroying them. And that's that's when it kind of clicked. I mean, I think we all knew that he had that potential, but like that's a huge stage to be backed into a corner and just fight his way out of the corner the way that he did. And I just thought that was so impressive. Like you said, both ends of the floor, he's blocking shots, he's getting in a stance, he's guarding guys, he's getting through screens, and then on the other hand, he's got like astronomical usage and doing it efficiently and just kind of carrying a team that was pretty down in all aspects aside from Ant in that series. So I just thought that was a whole different beast in that series compared to what we saw against Memphis.
100%. And on top of that, I think it's time that I think I tweeted it out or put some kind of response over the last couple of days. I think it's time that we, us, Wolves fans, national media, anybody else, NBA fans, they stop, people don't always think of Ant as, the greatest defender. And Wolves fans might be a little biased. We might, and we see him on a day-to-day basis. So we might say he's, a lot of fans might say he's not a liability, but he's not like a great defender. I think it's time to start saying Anthony Edwards is turning into a great defender. I don't think he's there yet, but I think he's a good defender right now. Mm-hmm. I think he's an A1 on the ball defender right now. As we speak, he's elite on the ball. He needs to still correct some things, obviously, off the ball. But Jake, would you say like Anthony Edwards, he's arguably one of the best guards in the NBA right now at the chase down, help side block right now? Mm-hmm. Like all those blocks we're seeing him do, how many guards do you see doing that in the NBA? I mean, he really is like Dwayne Wade. He really is. Yeah. Like, it's just what D Wade used to do, get the blocks, right? And the amount of steals that Anthony Edwards gets per game with those hands, the knowledge, it just shows that he has a really high basketball IQ. And those have only improved every year. I think that's the most exciting part so far. He's starting to get other stuff down. I'm noticing in FIBA, he's getting a lot more physical, and he's going up against bigger guys, and he doesn't even care. He'll take them down and play defense on anybody right now. I think his positioning is getting better. So I think I'm starting to see him develop slowly as a defender. And there are just these flashes, and we've all seen it too in some of the close games where Anthony Edwards, when he's consistent, when he has the mentality, when he wants to, he can be an elite defender.
Yeah, that's that. While you were saying that, that was what I was thinking about, is that what I've been kind of coming back to for the entirety of last season and still now, obviously, is that Ant is such a moments player. Like he can have a 0-point first half for USA and then score 17 in the second half in a really tight game. Mm-hmm. When the game is on the line, I trust him probably more than anyone on the team to get a defensive stop, because he is a moments guy, even if he's not having that completely dominant night, or if he's had a few off-ball lapses defensively throughout the game, or if he's just having one of those kind of sleepy nights where he's not, his game isn't all the way there. You know that you're going to get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 moments throughout a game that are just going to be unfathomably good, like stuff that other people can't do. And he has that in his locker. I mean, you'd like to see him do that defensively for entire games, but how many guys are as good as Anthony Edwards is at his best defensively for 48 minutes a night, while also, giving you 26, 27 points a game? It's almost, unseen around the league. What he does, and what a lot of these great two-way guys do, is they save themselves, not in a bad way, but they come through when they need to defensively. And I think Ant showed small flashes in his first 2 seasons, but last season it was every time they needed a really big defensive possession and he was tasked with doing that, he came through. Those big blocks that you're talking about, those chase down blocks, they're moments where the eyes are on him. The eyes are only on him and one other guy, and he, comes out on top more often than not. So I just always come back to Ant is a moments kind of player, and that I don't mean that to take away from the fact that he can do things all game. He can score 45 points, and that takes an entire game to do. But it's when there's a big moment, I do trust Anthony Edwards, especially probably more defensively than offensively, to have that one big play that wins the game, or that gets a big stop, or that does something where you just can't believe it just happened.
Yeah, it's like it reminds you of when LeBron had that big block in the playoffs. chase down.
Yeah, that's a big moment. That's something you could imagine Anthony Edwards doing in a huge playoff series when the game is on the line.
You can hear the national guys screaming on the TV. He had the huge block. When Giannis has the big block too. Those, like you said, the moments. That kid is special. I mean, the way he gets up too. It's. I mean, how many guys?
Oh, he's a freak. He's a freak athlete.
Insane. And so you can't just say that another guy can replicate that, because they can't. They just physically cannot do what Ant can do. And that's just, he's that special of a player. And the fact he has such a good wingspan, he's so bulky for his size and at his age. I think that also just is a recipe of he's going to be able to switch on multiple guys. He can stay with smaller guards, but he can guard all the way up to, potentially even power forwards at some points, which absolutely.
Well, he was guarding Nikola Vucevic from a lot of that game. They were trying to front Vucevic with Ant in the post to kind of run a zone where Ant could kind of roam around and stop the post-ups from Vuce, who was obviously playing really well to Montenegro. So, that shows you that a guy like Steve Kerr has the faith in him that he can body up with one of the best kind of body-to-body big men in the league. So, I mean, it's just another tick of approval, another step that he's taking.
And today, one of the coolest things I noticed about Edwards, too, another growing thing is I remember seeing a moment where he was going off in the second half, and he really had a chance to keep going off. And he had a chance to take a shot, but he decided to pull it down instead, go around and do a nice pass. Jaren Jackson Jr. get him involved into the game, and then Jaren Jackson kind of went around and got kind of he tried to go back and get a dunk, but it kind of like he didn't fully get the dunk, but he got the basket. And so just getting like his teammates involved, I'm starting to notice him pass up the normal shots you would have seen him take his first years. And he's really trying to get, pass it, share the ball. And I think that's one of the most encouraging things we've seen in FIBA is Anthony Edwards is really sharing the ball. He's playing team basketball. He's getting everyone involved, and his rebounding still. I mean, it started improving over the years. We've seen it in Minnesota. But I think I'm so impressed on how Anthony Edwards rebounds the ball. It's something we just begged Andrew Wiggins to do, right? We'd have those games that Wiggins would drop. Wiggins would drop 40 points and 10 rebounds, or 38 points and 10 rebounds, and everyone we get so excited in Minnesota, right? And we just.
But it was normally like 21 and 2 rebounds and 1 assist.
Yeah, and Anthony Edwards right now, I think he's showing you that even if he doesn't always get the scoring numbers, like even when he's dropped 15 points for Team USA in games, he's getting rebounds, he's getting assists, he's playing good defense, and he's doing he's getting steals. He's doing other things now. So even if his shot isn't falling, like you said, he's still going to be effective. He's going to affect the game on either side of the ball. And we all know he's going to get going eventually in the offensive end. You can only hold down that kind of a guy so long. So it's been so fun to watch him grow. Kid's amazing. I'm just glad finally the national media and NBA fans all around are talking about him, and he's really getting a lot of the praise he deserves. So it's been awesome, man. Another guy, Jake, that kind of want to move on to is going to be Karl-Anthony Towns. He had a game this morning, dropped 39 points in the FIBA tournament. Unfortunately, the Dominican Republic did end up losing, but still, nonetheless, Karl played a fantastic game. He's been great in the 3 games for the Dominican Republic. And he looks, I think my favorite part about it that I put out, I've tweeted this out too. He looks so freaking happy, Jake. Like he looks, and it's so good for him because everything he went through over the last couple of years with injuries, and then obviously the passing of his mother, who is Dominican, and that's why he is playing for the team. I think, that's so special to him to play for the Dominican Republic and his mother. And I know she's damn proud looking down on Kat, but just to see him, how happy he is, I think it's so good for him. He needed that for just his own mentality and sanity. And I just think it's so good because he's going to come into next season with just this positive aura. And he's just going to be almost hopefully, have a really big season for the Wolves because of this.
Yeah, I think you compare it to last offseason, and last offseason, I think he got stuck in this vicious cycle of the illness before training camp, and then he comes into training camp and he kind of doesn't do anything as he's recovering. And then the season starts and he's in pretty poor form by his standards because of that injury and because of he's probably a bit out of shape just in general from not being able to work out. And he's trying to configure how to work out with Gobert, and everything just spiraled and it obviously ended with the calf injury. And I think you compare that to this year where he is playing with the FIBA team. He looks super happy. He's out there celebrating with the fans. You know, he's scoring a ton of points. He's playing well. He looks super healthy in terms of the way he's moving, especially compared to the back end. Yeah, compared to the back end of last season, where he was back and he was playing fairly well before the playoffs, but he didn't really look overly healthy.
The speed is back too.
I just think that
driving speed, it's back. Like I noticed that at elite speed, the burst come back, right?
Yeah, that's such a huge part of his game. Like if he doesn't have that burst, he's kind of just a 3-point shooter who's a bit slow when doing other things. But what makes him different and what makes him, I think, a really unique big man scorer is that he can shoot that three and then he can take guys off the dribble when he's not shooting the three. So, I mean, you look at the game against Puerto Rico, he was fantastic. Still a few issues in some games with some fouling and with some temper tantrums, but I mean, you got to take the good with the bad. I think at this point with Towns, and what we were missing last season was the good, and we were just getting too much of the bad, due to health and due to kind of the like I said, the off season that he had. But I think if you're projecting forward to next season, he's going to come in with a team that's overachieved the Dominican Republic. They've done their country proud. He's the biggest reason that they've done so. He's honored his mother, which again is so awesome, and he's done such a great job of it. They've got at least one more game, if not a few more, if they manage to beat Serbia. They've, like I said, they weren't meant to be where they are right now. Yeah. So I think that he's going to come in with confidence in himself. He's going to come in with confidence in his off season. He said in an interview the other day that he normally doesn't start working out until after this point in the year. So I think he's going to come back healthier. He's going to come back quicker. Hopefully that leads to better health throughout the season. I just think the signs for Cat are all positive this season, whereas last season the signs heading into the season were all negative. And I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the season, but that to me can only be a good omen.
The way he's shooting the ball right now too is
I just want to see him keep jacking up shots, man. Keep letting them fly all season.
This might be the best I've ever seen him shoot from three, and we've seen him shoot, in his career be a 40% nearly, shooter, right? But the way he's shooting right now is, it's probably unsustainable, but it's just crazy. I mean,
that's the type of shots that he's taking as well. It's not. They've been really deep threes. They've been
Miller shots.
Shots off the dribble. Like it's not just that standard kind of catch and shoot three from right on the arc that we're used to, and that's the beauty of FIBA play, especially on a team that doesn't have the talent around him, the NBA level talent around him, is that he can experiment a little bit. The expectations aren't super high. He just has to go out there and kind of, let his hair down and play basketball. And I think that's what we all would like to see a little bit more from him for the Timberwolves, is just let your hair down and go and play basketball because you're an insanely talented basketball player.
Yeah, and I think it's just good for him to realize that I'm successful playing this way. And so maybe, the coaching staff, Finch, all those guys, they're all watching, obviously, him play in FIBA, and they're figuring out how to really utilize him in the game, how to offensively feed him. And I think Carl needs to know himself. Sometimes you wonder, Carl, how did you only shoot these many times? And now I feel like he's just kind of having fun, letting it fly. And you want him to shoot. He's too talented of an offensive player to not let it fly at certain moments. So hopefully he learns from this as a player himself. And he just learns that, hey, you know what? I just got to go be myself and play my own game and trust in all the outcomes, because I think he's going to get plenty of open opportunities playing alongside of the Wolves players. But yeah, that kind of goes into the other thing is, how will, Cat and Gobert really fit this upcoming year? Now we've seen him perform in the FIBA season. We've seen that he can be a threat from deep. Do you think Cat's going to be out on the perimeter mostly, or do you think they're going to, how does the spacing work? What does your gut tell you on what the Timberwolves game plan is going to kind of be, Jake? What are we going to see?
Yeah, my gut is confused because I'm not sure that Finch loves using Cat as a sole kind of perimeter guy because he's so talented in other areas. I think in general, Finch's offensive scheme, he enjoys getting people in the post so that he can open up looks for people on the perimeter. that just doesn't work as much when Gobert's there as well. It worked the season before when they had shooters and spacers and runners around Cat. I know Vando was there, but Vando would cut from the perimeter. He was fast. He would move around inside the arc, kind of like the Energizer bunny that he is. And Gobert isn't that. And that's, I think they have to, when they sit down this offseason, or they probably already have, and they kind of, the coaching staff go through what they need to do to improve this offense next season, which was really bad during the season. I think it ranked 23rd in the league at the end of the season. So they need to improve that. And I think that it is have Cat on the perimeter more, run more pick and roll with Gobert, use Cat as that kind of release valve out on the perimeter. And because he doesn't just have to be a 3-point shooter, as we've seen in the FIBA tournament. If he catches and there's defenders running at him, he can easily go around people. He's such a great finisher when he's got a runway to the rim. He'll draw a lot of fouls. He's always drawn a lot of fouls. I know we don't like the whistle that he gets, but he's always been a fairly high foul drawer. He's going to make a lot of shots from three as well. If he shoots 2 or 3 or 4 more threes a game, I mean, I'm happy with that. I'm happy to see him let it fly as much as he wants to, as much as the coaching staff will let him. So I think that if the goal is to foster Ant into a superstar, then the ball is obviously going to be in Ant's hands, a lot. That means Cat is going to be that secondary guy. And I think as a secondary guy, shooting 8, 9, 10 threes a night, attacking off the dribble, kind of staying away from the post just to give the team more spacing. That's what I would like to see personally, because I just think that in my head, there's a really dynamic offense there with Ant driving and kicking to Cat, and Cat driving and kicking. Mike Conley's going to run pick and roll with Gobert as well, and that's really efficient. You've got Jaden McDaniels, who just kind of can fit into any of these roles, any of these schemes really well as a shooter and an attacker as well. So I think there's a lot of firepower there, but I just don't want to see the two bigs too close to each other in the offense, because that's when things can get a bit cramped, especially for Ant if he's trying to drive.
Yeah, the Wolves, they can always stagger Cat and Edwards, right?
Well, yeah, and they will. They'll stagger Cat and Rudy as well as much as possible, I think. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds from the two big men.
Yeah. So and then that kind of goes into Mike Conley, where now we finally are going to get Mike Conley for a full season. Mm-hmm. Is he a big difference, Jake? Do you think over D'Angelo Russell for the team if he has the full year with the Wolves? Because if you think about last year, if the Wolves had Mike Conley the whole season, are they barely making it to the playoffs, or is that really that big of a difference for the Timberwolves team with their current roster and how it's constructed?
Yeah, well, I think that last point is the most important. Is it's how the current roster is constructed, because I don't think that Conley could have been as good as D'Lo was the season before on a team that kind of relied on D'Lo to be more of a shooter, more of a creator. And D'Lo, I'm not a huge D'Lo fan, but I think the season prior where Minnesota won 46 games, he was awesome in the role that he played. He still had his defensive issues, but he really fit in Chris Finch's system that year. But then you roll over to the next year. He obviously didn't mesh with Gobert very well. I mean, you replace Conley with D'Lo in that respect, and you get a guy who really fits with Gobert and who really knows how Gobert operates. They needed a little bit more point of attack defense last season, I think, from D'Lo, and they didn't get it. Conley's much better there, and more importantly, Conley's really good at chasing shooters if he's playing in that off-ball role. Like, obviously, Jaden McDaniels is going to handle a lot of point of attack defense, and so is Ant. So Conley was really, really great at kind of playing on small forwards. Like he had games where he played on Cam Johnson. He had games where he played on like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, guys who were going to move off screens and shoot threes. And Conley was very good at kind of staying with those guys, which is a huge upgrade on D'Lo, who was a good talker off the ball, but pretty lazy as an actual mover. But yeah, there's pros and cons to D'Lo and Conley. I think that people probably judge D'Lo a little bit too harsh, because I think he did a lot of really great things in Minnesota compared to what they had previously. But there's also, the pros to Conley is that he can bring a little bit more kind of wisdom, a little bit more sageness in terms of playing with Gobert, a little bit more calm. D'Lo's kind of, crash and bash. He's all fire. and sometimes fire isn't the right way to approach things. Whereas Conley, I think, is a bit more measured with the way he approaches every game, and that can work both ways. Maybe sometimes they're going to need that fire that they had with D'Lo, and they won't get it from Conley. So I think overall, I think it's definitely an upgrade. I think in terms of what they need next season, it's an upgrade, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a full season, a full off season. More importantly, with Conley, and I think Finch loves him. I think that's a big difference between the two. Is I don't think that Finch loved D'Angelo Russell. I think he knew that he needed him, but I think that Finch really trusts everything that Conley does, and that gives the Wolves almost like a mini Finch out on the court, and that's going to be super important next season.
It's like having another coach, just like you said. And on top of that, Conley's been in the playoffs so many years, right? Was elite with the Grizzlies for so long. Had experience, had the best, number one Western Conference team with the Utah Jazz. There's just so many things in his career and accolades that he's done and played with all these players. He's also been a really good defender, and he's learned how to be a good defender, and he can teach the young guys how to be a great defender. And then on top of that, I just think he's been a phenomenal, something that's underrated. I think he's a really good spot-up shooter from the corner. I think he's been awesome there for the Timberwolves when he plays
I think he shot 52%, I think, from the corners after he got to Minnesota, which is incredible. And it was on high volume, too, for a corner three-point shooter. He was – I mean, that's probably unsustainable over a full season, but he's developed into a really sick shooter. And – he's playing more off the ball than he ever did with Utah or with Memphis. And I think he's really taken to that role where he can either be the point guard and run the pick and roll and run the offense, or he can just let Anthony Edwards or McDaniels or Towns do it. And he can stand in the corner and be a really, really dangerous player from that spot.
It's just nice, too, that you have a guy that you can always slow the game down with, too. If you got one of the young guys they're a little rattled, they're on the road, they're in LA, and the crowd's behind them. It's nice to have a guy who has that veteran presence versus, a younger guy like D'Angelo can still do it, but, D'Angelo's going to bring the ball up the court and try to silence the crowd. Mike Conley's not looking for the home run plays. He's looking to calm everything down, and he's going to stretch out the defense and make the right play. And I think that's so important for the Timberwolves. And I think having a full year of Mike Conley with Karl Anthony Towns is going to be so great for his game too. I think he's going to fit better than D'Angelo fit with Karl. I think that's something that's like really not being talked about as well, is just having Karl being around him.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that too much either. Yeah. That's a good point, is that we haven't really explored that dynamic between Cat and Conley. It kind of just got swept under the rug last season. They were obviously in the middle of trying to make the playoffs, trying to get a better seeding in the playoffs, where they probably didn't have time to experiment, to tinker with some things in terms of the Cat and Conley duo. But that's just as important as any other duo on this team, which is they're going to both be high-minute guys, like a lot of touches between the two of them, a lot of usage within the offense. So, yeah, it's a really good point. It's something I think I might have to go do a little bit of diving into, because I'd love to see kind of how they went last season and what could maybe be improved or what could be built upon.
Definitely do it. Let me know when you get the numbers. I'd love to see him play. And Mike, I think like D'Angelo, there's been rumors that not everyone loved him in the locker room, or he had the issues with Ryan Saunders back in the past that we do know. And so, but the one thing about Mike is, everyone loves him. All the reporters love him. Everywhere he's gone, everyone speaks highly of him. Any place he's ever played, all the players loved him. Everyone loves Mike. And so that's just
Did he win Teammate of the Year again? Did I say that?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. He did win it again. And I think he's just it's just to have a guy like that, it's just priceless, man. It's just priceless to have that in your locker room, especially when we're losing some vets like Taurean Prince. Now we have Mike Conley really stepping in, and Anthony Edwards, the most important player in your franchise. He loves Mike. They played Call of Duty together. That's important too, to have that relationship, because everything now is just geared upon making Ant happy and how to really build around him. So it's just great for the kid to really learn from a guy like that. The last thing, Jake, before we kind of wrap things up today, that I wanted to go over for anybody still watching is, somebody that I'm all in. I'm literally all in. I'm all aboard, Jake. Leonard Miller hype train, and I had to bring it up, man. I know we talked a little bit that we were going to talk about it today, but Leonard Miller. I think from what I saw in summer league, he's ready for NBA minutes. Because he looks like an NBA player already. I would put him at the very end of the bench in the rotation. I'm not saying he should come in and get made minutes right off the rip here, but I was huge on a guy like Josh Minott. I really thought Josh could come in and potentially earn some minutes eventually. But from when I watched the two of them play in summer league, Leonard looks like the real deal. He looks like he's ready right now. He looks more polished than Josh is. And I still love Josh. I'm still a big Josh fan, and I hope he earns it. But I think Leonard Miller's ready to contribute from day one. And I don't know what you think, but what did you see from him that made you think this kid's got something special? And, the Wolves might have got a steal as long as you let Tim Conley cook.
I don't think we were saying let Tim Conley cook at about halfway through the season. Yeah, I mean, I just think he's a basketball player. I mean, I think he gets a lot of plaudits for his athleticism, for his kind of size, the way that he grew from being a point guard in middle school or whatever into a guy who can really probably play the center at the moment with his size. But I think he's a really good basketball player, and I think that's more important for young players than actual just athletic gifts. He's got a really great touch. I think that was the first thing I noticed when I started watching his G League games, and then we watched the Summer League as well, is that he's got fantastic touch around the rim, and that translates to the jumpers in the mid-range. He had a few of those little post-up jumpers with really nice touch. That translates to the three-point shot, which looked ugly, but it was going in. And I think it's going in because he's got such nice touch with the way he shoots the ball, the way he kind of has that spatial awareness with his shot. I just think that he does a lot of little things that help win games. He rebounds. He's unpolished defensively, but he wants to defend well. He wants to protect the rim. He wants to make the right pass. He wants to get out in transition and get easy points. Like, I think these are all things that are going to endear themselves to the coaching staff right away. Like, he's one of those guys, I think, that if he was playing on a team that's going to win 30 games next season, he's probably playing 25 minutes a night. But maybe unfortunately for him, but fortunately for us, the Timberwolves are probably looking to win 50 games next season, and that means they don't have as much on-court time to kind of give him more rope to play. But it also means he's learning from better players. He's in a better environment. He's entering the NBA as someone who is expected to play winning basketball if he's on the court. He's going to go down to the G League. The system's going to be the same there. In terms of, they're looking to win games. They're looking to play the way Finch does. So I just think he's he might not get minutes right away. He might not get minutes all season. He might have to do a whole year in the G League. But he's in a really good environment. Finch is a really experimental and creative coach with his big men. I think that he knows how to use big men. He knows how to grow big men. And he's not afraid to let a big guy play like a guard if that's how the big guy is kind of wired. He lets Cat be Cat, and not every coach has let Cat be Cat. So I expect he'll do the same with Leonard Miller. I expect when we see these G League highlights, we're going to see him, playing in a way that's sometimes looking like a big man, sometimes a point guard, sometimes a small forward. Like, he's that kind of. I think when I wrote about him in the summer, it was that he's like. Back in the day, there used to be the tweeners, and everyone didn't want to draft a tweener. You didn't want to draft a Derek Williams or an Anthony Bennett. Nowadays, everyone wants a tweener. Everyone wants an Aaron Gordon, a guy who we're not sure about what his actual position is. That's a good thing these days, and I think that Leonard Miller is that in that new age of tweener and can do a little bit of everything. And maybe if he can have one or two skills that end up elite, then all of a sudden you've got a real player on your hands. But at worst, you've got a guy who can pass, dribble, shoot, rebound, all at a solid level. So I'm high on Leonard Miller. I'm on the Leonard Miller hype train. It's Miller time all season.
Oh, it's always going to be Miller time. I can't wait to tweet out that and say that, everything like that. But it's been awesome having you on, Jake. Obviously we wanted to do this for a while. I'm glad we could make it happen. I'm hoping that, you know, anybody still tuning in or people watching this recording later down the road enjoyed what we put out there for you. Everybody today, we're, you know, just doing what we both love, covering the team we both love. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you know, it's the addiction that me and Jake both love, right?
Yeah, we're stuck with it. We were saying before the show, we're kind of stuck with it for life now, whether the team's bad or good. We're stuck with it, but hopefully we're on the upswing here. You know, we've got a team that's fun to cover. We've got some fun, really fun players, and really bright future. So I'm happy to be doing it. I'm happy that you're doing it. You know, and I'm happy to kind of get together today and talk about it.
Yeah, man. You can find my podcast, The Daily Wolves, on Apple and Spotify by searching The Daily Wolves. Obviously, Jake, one more time, where can they find you before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, Howls and Growls anywhere. Howls and Growls on Twitter. Howls and Growls is my Substack where you can get all my writing, all my deep dives and kind of play breakdowns and the player ratings after every game during the season, which is probably the most popular stuff over there. And then the YouTube Howls and Growls as well, doing some breakdowns. I'm really looking a lot at Minnesota's bench for next season. So there'll be a Shake Milton YouTube video up soon. I might do a deep dive written piece about Milton and Nikhil and Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid, which I think is another underrated talking point that Minnesota's bench is going to be super dope next season. So yeah, catch me on all those channels and come say hello and you know, get some unique content.
Yeah, definitely check out Jake. Definitely give him a follow. I can't wait for those videos to come out. I'm going to be watching myself. And last thing, I've said it in my last stream. I'm going to say it one more time. I will be dropping some I'll be dropping some merch.
Oh,
some Timberwolves merchandise. So that will be coming up hopefully in the next month or so. Still working out a few things, but we're looking good right now. We're aiming. And I'll definitely, when I know the dates, I will put out it so everybody knows. But I can't wait to share some of my Timberwolves thoughts and ideas with everybody. So hopefully everyone does really, you know, love that stuff. So
yeah, I'll definitely be getting some.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I can't wait. You know, I worked hard on it, so it'll be sweet. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. And as always, go Wolves.